Our survey currently shows that it is 12% plus or minus 1.7%. That is close to what GSS is saying. It means that truly there are 12% of people who are unemployed. There's another 12% who work as a casual workforce. All this policy 24-hour economy, what does it mean to these young voters who are unemployed, who are casually employed? Digitization, how does it create jobs for these people? You must be able to interrogate these political parties to give you practical solutions to address the problems that have been highlighted by the demographic analysis of the data. What we do as a company is to be consistent with our polls. Any pollster that has gone down the drain meant that he wasn't tracking the polls. It is absolutely crucial to track the poll, because using a single period poll doesn't tell the story. Because there are statistical analyses that could happen within the time you're taking the poll that would distort the outcome. But if you have been picking the polling for several years, you have a trend curve. And the trend curve is the true reflection of what people are going to do. But above all, we try to always refine our methodology. Is that the best way for us to do this survey? If we go to a location that is unique, how do we address unique local situations? For example, let me tell you, in some parts of the northern region, if you go and deploy a sample of 150 there in the morning, the people you capture in the morning will be women. That will not be reflective of the constituency. So when we got to know that, we made sure that certain times of the day we captured a female quota, and at certain time of the day we come back and capture the male quota. This is an experience we have learned on the ground.
Hello and welcome to Talk Time. This week we are going to be looking at polls, what they mean, why they are conducted, how do they arrive at conclusions, and all of that. Welcome to Talk Time. Hello and welcome back to Talk Time. And as I indicated, this week we're going to be looking at polls. We had several of them. Some way off the mark, some close to the mark, some on point, and so on. But why do we conduct these polls? And how do we conduct them? The controversies around them, are they legitimate or not? And it's our pleasure to welcome to our studio at Abelenke, Mr. Musa Dankwa, the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Sir, you're welcome to the studio.
Thank you very much.
Now, these polls, why are they conducted?
The polls serve different purposes. Let me begin from us, the voters. Opinion polls tend to confirm what we believe might be true. For example, we all have heard people saying things are hard, but you can't tell what proportion of Ghanaian voters think things are hard. We all know that people's standard of living has been affected by the economic crisis. Indeed, the World Bank said so. But what proportion of voters believe that their standard of living has worsened? Without opinion poll, you can't put numbers to these metrics. With opinion poll, we're able to say that 65% of Ghanaians are on the view or are of the view that the country is headed in the wrong direction. Before, you couldn't put anything on it. We also know from the current poll that 51% of Ghanaians say that their standard of living has worsened compared to the last 12 months, which confirms the World Bank data. Without polling, the argument would be hearsay. For the media, it helps to shape the conversation. It helps you guys to focus and ask politicians what solutions have they got to the issues that the polls numbers are suggesting. If Ghanaians are saying that things are hard, what in the economic policy of government, in the media review, can the Minister of Finance or the government do to make sure that people feel a bit positive about the outlook of this country. What can they do? What kind of policies can they put in place to ensure that the lifestyle of people or the living standard of people doesn't get any harder from where it is now? Indeed, if you look at the IMF policies, even though they recommend some stringent policies, they also tend to advise certain measures to cushion poverty or people who are under a certain level of poverty. This data help government to know what proportion of voters are in the bracket of suffering. For the political parties themselves, it enables you to see your weaknesses, your strength, and then you can come up with strategies to address your weaknesses and also to build on your strength.
What are you measuring? Are you measuring reality or you are measuring perception? And what difference does it make? What you measure?
When we interview voters, it's no longer perception, it's the reality. We ask them, compared to the last 12 months, has their standard of living improved, gotten worse, or has remained the same? Those who have felt something has improved, they tell us they've seen some improvement. Those who say maybe nothing has changed compared to what they know 12 months ago, they say so openly. And those who are suffering on a regular basis, on daily basis, tell us that it's getting worse. That is not perception, it's reality. If we ask a question like, do you believe that corruption has increased or remained the same or unchanged, those are perceptions, because they will not be able to have experienced all corruption cases directly, but they may hear cases of corruption that is being reported. In those instances, those type of questions are perceptions, different from when we say your standard of living and then the direction of the country and who do you want to vote for. It's not perception, it's what they intend to do.
When did you start doing this kind of work?
We started opinion polls sometime in July 2019. In fact, in May 2019. We started with constituency level polls in 2019. We did Ablekuma West, we did Medina, we did Swami, we did Takrady, Esikado, and many other places. And then in July 2019, we did our first national poll, which interviewed 5,140 voters across the country. And then the last one for that 2020 elections was around November 2020, when we did the last national tracking poll on the elections. And ever since, we started the polling again in January 2022, and we've done that every quarter. Beside the quarterly polls, we've also done specific constituency polls when there have been some flags in the normal poll. For example, we did a poll in Medina, a part of the national tracking poll. We saw a signal that things were not going well. So we went back to repeat the same poll, then we confirmed the situation. We did confirmation polls in Sekendi, Takrady, and other places. Indeed, in some of my because we saw some flags that we thought, let's go and confirm. So it's been our practice to poll and poll and poll as and when we feel necessary. Again, if you remember 2022, we did the national poll on e-levy before it was passed. And then we showed the government how unpopular it was. And then I think that poll informed the government to increase the stakeholder engagement after the approval.
Now, you've mentioned a number of polls that you have done. Your very first poll. How close was it, to the outcomes of the elections? How close was it?
The last poll we did, we had 50.4% for Nanado as a headline poll number, plus or minus 1.9% margin of error. So effectively, if you add 1.9 to 50.4%, you get exactly what Nanado got.
So you were on point?
On point, yes.
Now I'm talking about your very first poll.
That was 2020.
This one was your very first poll?
Yes, that we were well public before the election.
Now, subsequently you've done other polls. I remember Asinov.
Asinov, yes.
What did your polls indicate? And what was the outcome
in
of the election?
In Asinov, it was quite interesting. We had been in Asinov for about 4 consecutive weeks in Asinov. So we were tracking the poll every week. From the beginning of the poll, the MPP candidate was almost 10% or more ahead of Tim Kwesi. But every day, week within the poll, he was declining. And in the very last poll that we did, the difference between him and Kwesi was 1%. Almost tied, because our margin of error was around 2% at the time. So being 41% and 42% was statistically tied. But we said that despite MPP candidate leading the race, he was going to lose the election, if you read the report, because of the trajectory of the race. Every day from our modeling, MPP was losing about 1% of the vote. And in the last poll we did, it was Sunday. So Monday, Tuesday, or maybe 2 or 3 days before the actual vote were cast. And we said that if this trajectory of the race continues, then we expect Tim Kwesi to win the race. And indeed, he won the race.
What about the margins? Did you get it right?
No, the margin was a bit off because we were saying that because it was tied, we didn't forecast what the end would be. We left the race as it was because those who said they were undecided were quite a big number, and we couldn't allocate that number to any of the candidates. So we left the race as tied at the point. But we said that if the elections were held on Tuesday, it's very likely Kwesi was going to win. Another thing we did was in Kumawu by-election, which we said that MPP was going to win, but not less than, I think, 70%. And then I think they won by 71% also.
So you got that also right?
Yeah, correct, yes.
The other one, which was a bit tricky, was the MPP presidential race. What was your prediction? I mean, the MPP guys were predicting 70%, 75%, 80% for Bawumia.
You know, we started polling that election from June. It was a partnership between ourselves and a sister station. And in that race, Bawumia was leading with about 7% or so. And as the race drew nearer, the gap was closing. But then Alan withdrew after the superdelegate, which we didn't poll. We didn't do any poll on superdelegate because we didn't feel we have a good number and people who can speak the truth. So we stayed out of the superdelegate. But then after Alan withdrew from the race, we then polled again. We realized that Alan's supporters had gone to Canada, Japan. But the very last poll that we did, which came about 2 weeks before the election, that had Bawumia on 43.5%. Kennedy on 23.5%. 14% did not tell us who they intend to vote for, even though they knew. They said they wouldn't tell us. And 18% were undecided. So at that point, we needed to make projections, but we couldn't leave the race as it is, or as it was. So we said that having understood the numbers, we believe that by the end of the poll, Bawumia will be on 58.4% plus or minus 1.9% margin of error. And Kennedy was going to be 40% plus or minus 1.9 margin of error. And at the end of the poll, when others were projecting 85% and 70%, and indeed we were vilified in the media that any poll that puts Dr. Bawumia below 75% is a bogus poll. But at the end of the day, we came on 60.3%, and Bawumia got 61.4%.
Okay. Now, your latest poll, what are some of the interesting figures that you have come up with?
I always like to speak to the data that would eventually tell us why people are voting the way they are voting. It provides you with the underlying reasons or factors that drives the polling numbers. So I always start with those who said that the country is headed in the wrong direction. Because if they believe that we are on the right track, they will certainly renew the mandate of that driver or the party that is driving the wheel. Currently, 65% of Ghanaian voters are saying that the country is headed in the wrong direction. That is quite a big number, compared to 25% who think that it's in the right direction. Every region in this country believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. No exception. From Ashanti region to Northeast. And then you look at people's standard of living. 51% of the people we spoke to said that compared to the last 12 months, their standard of living has gotten worse. Over 50% of voters. Now, if we have argued that elections are based on bread and butter matters, and these people are saying that as far as that bread and butter situation has gotten worse, those kind of feeling tends to influence the way they intend to vote. Then we ask the third question, which revolves around the top 3 issues they would consider before they vote. We ask them that, look, we know you have plenty issues, but give us top 3 that are always going to be on your mind when you go to the vote, when you go to vote. Number 1 for all voters is jobs. Jobs is number 1. 2 is economy. 3 is education. Now the question is, what is the current job situation? If it is positive, it tends to favor the party in government. If it's negative, it tends to go against you. Economy being number 2 issue for voters, where is it right now? Is it in good shape or bad shape? If it's in good shape, believe me, the ruling party will get the dividends. If it's in the bad shape, the ruling party get punished for economic hardship. And then again, education. People feel that there are issues in education that have to be resolved. If that is the case, who would that favor? Now, the fourth thing we've also noticed, which is very important to understand the end numbers, is the level of division within the MPP fraternity. Whereas the NDC is quite united behind their candidate, MPP is fragmented. MPP votes are scattering at the moment, are being shared by Dr. Bawumia, between Dr. Bawumia, Alan Chirmatin, Mahama, and Anakwam Bidiaku. And that cannot be good for a party who wants to retain power. And then when we ask voters whether they believe the MPP will break the 8, 55% of voters say no, MPP will not break the 8. Only 27% believe they can break the 8. So these responses eventually will let us understand why the polling numbers look the way they look.
There's another factor which has come up, in the run-up to the next elections, which is the factor of religion. What did your polls tell you?
Right. In January, about 24% of voters believe that religion will play a role. 24%. Compared to, I think, 76% who said it wouldn't play a role. Now, in April, those who believe it will play a role has declined from 24 to 16%, which means as the economy become an issue more and more, religion kind of fizzle away a little. So, but by majority of around 84%, they said religion will not influence them. But still, if 16% of 18.5 million say it will influence them, that's a lot of voters. And in some cases, they would make difference in certain areas. But nobody is openly saying that I'm going to vote based on religion. They are saying it will influence them. To what extent is the argument now we have to find out. Given economy, jobs, education, what would religion really be at compared to all these three? What we find is that it's going to be an issue for people who are on the fringes of both parties. There are those who may be evangelical, who would like to have one of their own, and there are those who will be Muslims who want to have one of their own. It cuts both ways. But we believe that the numbers are much more bigger on the Christian side than the Muslim side.
So who are non-religious people voting for? Well, what is your preference? Non-religious people.
Okay, they are voting for John Mahama at the moment.
Non-religious?
Yes, yes.
Christians?
John Mahama.
Muslims?
John Mahama.
Traditional worshippers?
John Mahama.
So when it comes to religion, he appears to be the favorite.
Yes, people who said they are voting for him, when we analyze who they are by looking at their religious background, Christians by 53% are voting for Mahama, compared to about 34 or so for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. So they are split again between Mahama leads, followed by Bawumia and Alan Chiramatin in Nanakwa Mbediako.
Muslims,
Mahama is winning close to 60%.
More than Christians?
Yes.
How is that explained?
I think those who understand the NDC performance in the Zongos understand that. They're not voting because it is their own. They vote because traditionally they are aligned to NDC.
Okay, what about social classes? Did you find out what the preference of the social classes would be?
In terms of education or...
general social classes,
the demography,
I don't want to use the Marxist terms. You know.
Okay, the demography we look at, we look at gender, we look at people's educational background, we look at age groups, we look at ethnic groups, we look at various Christian denominations and the various Muslim denominations and how they are voting and party affiliation. We don't classify them beyond these demographics.
You don't use the Marxist analysis?
No.
Okay. But be that as it is, when you look at education, educational background, what does the picture look like?
I mean, John Mahama is winning across all demography. People without education, people with junior high, with senior high, tertiary, and without education. He's winning across all those demographics.
Is there a place where he's losing?
If you look at the ethnic voting bloc, he is behind Bawumia among Akans, but not by much, because I think the data we looked at in 2020, close to 70% of the Akans were voting for Nanado. Right now, it's about 53% or so, or 58%, I have to double check, voting for Bawumia. So the Akan vote for Bawumia has completely been slashed, because a chunk has gone to Mahama, a chunk is going to Alan Chiramatin, and a chunk is going to Nanakwa Mbediako. Now the second group that is tied between Mahama and Bawumia is a small minority ethnic group called the Mandis. In that ethnic group, it is square, Mahama 42, Bawumia 42. But among the rest of the ethnic groups, Mahama is leading. From Moli Dabani, Ewe, Ghana Dangbe, Gwans, Moshi, Gurushi, everywhere Mahama is leading.
But Nana Kwame Bediako features prominently in most of the categories.
Yes.
But then eventually you give him 2%. How is that possible?
Because you see, nationally, 2% nationally is impressive. If you look at what the entire small parties did in 2020, it was less than 2%. Nana Kwame Bediako is doing well in Bunu East. He gets about 9% in Bunu East total vote. Goes to Nana Kwame Bediako. He gets about 2% in Ashanti region. Can you imagine if NDC get additional 2% in Ashanti region, how that number help them? So when you are doing 2% in Ashanti region, that is quite a big number. Nana Kwame Bediako is doing 5% in Eastern region. A first timer in Eastern region. That is remarkable. So he's doing a bit here and there, here and there, here and there as a first timer. We don't know how he's going to perform in July. But we are monitoring that, but it doesn't seem to be somebody who is going to lose traction, because he's appealing to younger voters. who feel despondent, disappointed with the current system of MPP and NDC, and they're looking for somebody who can offer them something different. And that's why his message is kind of appealing to the younger voters.
We're going to take a short break now. And when we come back, I'm going to ask some interesting, some may say controversial questions.
Sure.
So we're taking a short break, and when we come back, the last question I would ask is, what is the interest of global info analytics? What is your interest in electoral polls? Or perhaps we'll start with, do you do other polls? And then we'll come to your specific interest in election polls. Yeah. Short break. Well, welcome back to Talk Time, and we are privileged, really privileged, to have in our studios Mr. Musa Dankwa, who is the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. And I said the question is straight. Do you do other polls apart from election polling?
Yes, we do. We do a lot of research for companies. We do market research, we do consumer research, we do trade census for companies. We also do private polling for politicians, but they won't tell you about that.
Private?
Yes.
What is that?
It means that the guy wants to contest somewhere in Eastern region. He wants to know his chances of winning before he invests in the project. He comes to us. This is my constituency. Can you test the ground for me whether it's worth wasting my money, or when I go there will be dividend? We do it for them. We've done that for MPP primaries quietly for some people, but those ones we don't talk about them. We've done some for NDC candidates quietly. We don't talk about them in public. And indeed, we've done some work for some of the parties that they are making noise about.
The private ones you do, are the results also on point?
Yes, on point. All of them.
All of the private ones?
All of them, yes.
Now, if I want to contest in Bumburubu,
yes,
and I come to you, what are the terms
okay.
of the agreement between me and you?
Because we are not partisan, we are independent, there are certain things that guide our work. Code of ethics. We will sign non-disclosure agreement that what we're doing for you is private and confidential. It's not meant to be shared with the media. That's the first thing. And then 2, we will do the survey for you and give you the report. But it doesn't mean that if somebody else comes to us asking for another work in the same Bunkurugu, we won't do that. We will do it. But on condition that we allow 1 month to expire from the last date we left Bunkurugu for Mr. A. So we will not do Bunkurugu poll at the same time for 2 people. We will not do that. It's against our ethics. We don't do that.
Okay.
And that's how we do our work. And we don't advise you on the numbers. We merely collect the data, analyze the data, and present to you the charts and the stuff. You then go with the data to meet your advisors, tell you what to do. Because if we advise you, we may offer counter advice on another person in the same place, and that's unethical.
Who pays for the survey? The private ones, who pays for
They
the
pay
survey?
themselves.
They pay.
Yes.
What about the non-private ones?
Non-private ones, we paid as a company. When we do work for private people, like those MPs, or we do work for companies who want to do market research. We've done market research for companies, big companies in this country. We've done market research for companies in South Africa. We've done market research for one of the big conglomerate companies into beverages in the world. We've even done work for one of the big companies in pharmaceuticals. So when they pay us, we've set aside this small money that we spend every 90 days to provide what we call the corporate social responsibility part of our work. For example, if private companies go to renovate a private school as part of the CSR, the money comes from their what? Their revenue. It's exactly the same with us.
You use your own revenue.
Companies' own revenue to do that.
what is the benefit to your company?
Good.
Using your revenue to do these pools.
It's no different from when big companies like MTN does CSR. It boosts their brands. They are associated with good things in society. And also help in their marketing. Remember, we are not a think tank or CSO. We are a private company. So what we do generates traffic for us in terms of marketing. Once our analysis and predictions come through, it means that if we are employed by a client to do market research, we'll be doing a proper research that reflects the sentiment of consumers. That will help our brand. And indeed, some of the job we got from international companies was because of the confidence they had in the work we have been doing on the public national opinion poll. Right now, if you go and search for market companies in Ghana or market research companies in Ghana, our name will be up there. That is the marketing side of it. And also, because we do political risk forecasting, it's a service we provide to big companies who wants to know the political dynamics in this country. It's consultancy. You cannot provide that advice without knowing the situation on the ground. So if we go and falsify situation on the ground to deceive Ghanaian public, we are equally deceiving our clients.
Do you have any other sources of income?
If you look at our article of what we call company incorporation document, market research, modeling, financial modeling. We do modeling of financial outcomes for PPP projects. We do
that's public-private partnership.
Yes. So it's companies who are into PPPs who want to model the outcome. We do the modeling for them as well, as part of what we do. Our normal market research, consumer research, trade census. If you want to see how your products are doing across the market, we have done a similar census last year. We covered the entire country for a client. We covered the 265 MMDAs, where we survey the market to see who sells what for a client. So we do a lot of things. In fact, our revenue from political polling is less than 10% of our total revenue. So we don't rely on it.
Now, how do you disseminate the results that you get?
Good.
Do you give it to the parties? Is it just sufficient to give it to the media and so on? How do you disseminate?
We have deliberately avoid engaging the political parties as institutions. You see, I have said before, when your report comes out and you send it to them directly, what they tend to do is that they may think you are putting pressure on them, that you are showing that they are not doing well, for them to give you a job to do. In fact, a friend of mine called me that, he wants to send my survey to one of the MPs that in his area shows that he's not doing well. I said to him that don't send it. Our reports are public. When you personalize like that, they may presume that you want them to give you a job. So you are pressurizing them to give you a job. So we have carefully avoided doing that. But they will use that to blackmail you eventually. Our reports are first published to the media openly. Also published on our social media handles, Facebook and X, and also on our website. If any political party has interest and they want to know, it is there. Unless you give us your name to include you in the list of distribution of the report, then we will do so. In that case, you ask for it. We know the political terrain. We don't want to be trapped by any political party.
Okay, we're going to go for another break. And when we come back, I'd like us to deal with your methods. What are the methods? Questions like sample size and so on, So short break, and when we come back, we'll delve into those issues. Well, welcome back to Talk Time, and we are privileged, really privileged, to have in our studios Mr. Musa Dankwa, the Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. And as you do know, they've been doing some interesting political surveys, election surveys, and they come up with some very interesting figures, causing a lot of ripples in the Ghanaian society. Now we'd like to know what methods you use. 32 million of us. Less than 17 million are actually qualified voters or vote. How do you select your sample?
Good. When it comes to sampling, it is not a question of opinion or somebody's wishful thinking. A sampling must be determined using the expected population size. We expect that by the time EC finishes the registration, about 18.5 million will be qualified to vote. So that is our starting point. And then you ask yourself, what sort of margin of error do you want to entertain in your survey? I mean, how far do you want your results to be out by? If you choose 5% margin of error, your sampling or sample size becomes smaller, or you want to entertain errors, which is as large as 5%. We have chosen 1.7% roughly as our margin of error. Well, that's why we are comfortable that we'll be okay. Because to move from 1.7% margin of error to 1%, we need to interview about 9,000 more people to get to a reduction of 0.7%. And that is be too expensive for us at this stage. And we don't see the need for that 1% margin of error because currently the data is very wide. So we chose 1.7%. Now, what confidence do we want to have in our numbers? Some people have 95% confidence level. We have 99% confidence level. So using these three variables, the 18.5 million voter population expected, margin of error of 1.7%, and the confidence level of 99%, mathematical formulas are there to give you what number of voters you have to interview if you want to have 1.7% margin of error and 99% confidence level. So it is not a matter of opinion. When you solve this, you have the sample that you need to interview. Now, it is not really about the size of the sample, even though 6,000 will give you that confidence. It is about how you distribute the sample. You could even take 200,000 sample, and then you decide to give 20% to Eastern region, Ashanti region 30%, Accra 15%. That is not how voters in this country are kind of structured. So the sampling of 6,000 still has to be distributed to the regions based on the contribution of that region to the overall voting population. So the 6,000 will be first shared among the regions based on how much they contribute. So traditionally, Accra gets highest, Ashanti gets next, you have Eastern region, Central region, Western region, and so on and so forth. So the sampling distribution is weighted. Once we are done with that level, we then select 30% of the 275 constituencies in Ghana to deploy these samples in. So when you apply 30% to 275, you get 82 constituencies. And then when we come to every region, we apply the same 30% to the total number of constituencies in that region. If you apply 30% to 48 in Ashanti region, you get 14. So if you check our sampling, we had 14 locations in Ashanti region. If you apply 30% for Greater Accra, you get about 10, and so on and so forth. So we pick the number of locations again based on a parameter of 30%. When we have done that, then we pick the Accra sample that we have assigned to Accra and share it among the 10 places that we have picked. And again, we pick those areas randomly using computer. We don't want to use our eyes. Let's go to Ablekuma. Let's go here. No, because you are then bringing in bias. If I dislike any MP or I like an MP there, I'll just go there because I want to see what the MP is doing. We don't do that. The computer has no feeling. Just press run simulation and it brings 10 of the Greater Accra, 14 from Ashanti region, and so on and so forth. And then that sample from the region, or the original sample, is then shared to these constituencies based on the electoral size, or the size of voters from those constituencies. And then when we have given the sample to each constituency, we then go down again to electoral area level. So if you say Medina, we don't say just go anywhere. No, we want to know where the responses are coming from, what the views are. So we randomly pick 3 from Medina West, let's say Pantine, Social Welfare North or South. So that when the results come, we can analyze it based on where the sample have been taken. Again, at that level, we see which of these 3 has more voters. It's Medina West, they get more, followed by Pantine or Social Welfare, and so on and so forth. Excuse me. So that's how we do our sampling. And then on the ground, we interview people randomly on the street. We don't do group interviews. If we see you coming from a church and you are 10 of you, we don't interview all of you. We just pick one. If you go to an event and they are doing a Muslim event, we don't sit there and say all the sample there, because then you're picking group thinking. We pick one. And we also ensure that we interview equal number of women and men. We try our best to do that. But in some cases, it becomes impossible because of the gender situation in those areas. Questionnaires are answered by the officers on the phone, tablets, in real time. So as soon as they finish answering the question, the responses come to the system. We are seeing in real time. We have a GPS to validate where the guy is doing the survey from. If we say she go to Ablikuma and went to Ablikuma West and went to Krowo, we will see that. So we won't let you even continue. We'll completely call you off, redeploy you, or take you off the system, and that will be the end of you. What we don't joke about in our team is ethics, integrity, and truthfulness. Once you are caught lying, that's it.
You are probably looking at Ejusu. Are you?
We started, and we kind of paused because we're not getting any response. People were just saying they haven't decided, but they are waiting for people to come and see them. But in fact, I've just given instruction again for them to start this afternoon to see whether we can get a clear indication of who is going to win. But we started something. And I think there are 2 main candidates that are appearing high, but we won't disclose their names until we have confidence in the numbers.
There are about 8 candidates or so.
I think 9 candidates.
Okay, so there's an additional one.
Oh, okay.
And we'll wait for your results.
Yes. But what we'll do is that if the numbers are very, very uncertain, we will not like to put our reputation on the line. We'll protect it, we'll keep the data, but we will not make an announcement. But if it is clear that we can make projections from what we have seen, we will do so.
Okay. Now, what do you expect us to do with your findings? I mean, the political parties, I know what they're going to do with their findings. You know.
I mean,
but for people like us, what do we do with the findings?
I mean, that's where you guys come in, you media people. Now, we have a data that shows who women intend to vote for, who people with jobs or no jobs intend to vote for. We have data about so many things. It's a lot. In fact, if you look at what we publish, it is less than 5% of what we have. Now, if a party comes in and saying that I will do A, B, C, D, then you go to demographic. According to GSS, about 14% of Ghanaians are unemployed. Our survey currently shows that it is 12%, plus or minus 1.7%. That is close to what GSS is saying. It means that truly there are 12% of people who are unemployed. There's another 12% who work as a casual workforce. All this policy 24-hour economy, what does it mean to these young voters who are unemployed, who are casually employed? Digitization, how does it create jobs for these people? You must be able to interrogate these political parties to give you practical solutions to address the problems that have been highlighted by the demographic analysis of the data.
Now, going forward, what do you intend to do? And I ask this question in view of the fact that there have been many polling agencies before you. Their reputation is in the gutters. Going forward, what do you intend to do and how do you intend to do it?
You know,
in order to avoid reputational damage.
What we do as a company is to be consistent with our polls. Any pollster that has gone down the drain meant that he wasn't tracking the polls. It is absolutely crucial to track the poll, because using a single period poll doesn't tell the story. Because there are statistical analyses that could happen within the time you're taking the poll that would distort the outcome. But if you have been picking the polling for several years, you have a trend curve. And the trend curve is the true reflection of what people are going to do. You could run so many type of trend curves. Now, if you remember when we were doing the MPP primaries, we showed a report with trend curve. And we showed Kennedy was trending up and Bami was trending down. That was why the race closed. The same thing we are doing right now. The trend curve is much more important to us than the single period polling that we have. We have more confidence in that. So we are keeping the tracking. And there are certain factors that are correlated with the outcome of the elections. Those two, we are watching it. But above all, we try to always refine our methodology. Is that the best way for us to do this survey? If we go to a location that is unique, how do we address unique local situations? For example, let me tell you, in some parts of the northern region, if you go and deploy a sample of 150 there in the morning, the people you capture in the morning will be women. That will not be reflective of the constituency. So when we got to know that, we made sure that certain times of the day we captured a female quota, and at certain time of the day we come back and capture the male quota. This is an experience we have learned on the ground, because the sample has to represent the people who are there. But timing is of essence.
Mm-hmm. Now, looking at the trend analysis, are we saying for sure that the current findings will persist up to December 2024, or that things are likely to change?
Let me tell you what we can see in the data. If you go back to January 2023, John Mahama was on 58%. Today, April, 54%. A drop of 4% over almost 16 months.
Significant?
No.
Okay, why not?
Because if you divide the 4% by the number of months, you could tell if the race doesn't go his way, what proportion he will lose every month to September. If that is carried, then you could calculate that even if he falls back, he will fall back to certain floor. Remember in Asenov, we said MPP was losing 1% on a daily basis, because that calculation came from the tracking we did. So we could calculate what is the number of percentage he loses every month. But in the case of this election, the dynamics are quite different, because you have a situation where John Mahama is solid by his base and backed heavily by floating voters. And to some extent, those who have refused to tell us they are voting their party affiliation. And these people are mostly MPP people who are not really comfortable saying they are MPP. Now, what could have helped MPP recover would have been if they had been united. At the moment, Alan Chamatim is drawing his support from MPP base. Nana Kwame Bediako drawing his support from MPP base. Some of the base are even...
Why? Is he close to MPP or something?
He says from Asuka boy.
Okay.
He's Asuka boy.
Okay.
From Kumasi.
Okay.
So
the ethnic element...
that's why the C, taking the C to Kumasi was for him. That was what I was mentioning about. I mean, so if you look at the numbers, it tells you that unless MPP is able to whip their members in line, they are not likely to make that huge gains they have to make in order to close the gap. And the gains that Alan is making is not making the gains from NDC. No. The gains are being made from MPP. Nana Bediako is gaining mostly from MPP and small from NDC as well. Mm-hmm. We can't discount that. Now, the crucial block, which is the floating voters, MPP is not making gains there at all. So these are the factors that could change the dynamic of the race. At the moment, we haven't seen any fundamental shift in the numbers. If you look at, indeed, the polling numbers using 90 or 3 months moving average, Mahama has actually increased his vote, share the vote, compared to Dr. Bawumia. And normally when you win the primaries, you expect the party to coalesce around you, reconcile, and move in unison. Now they are moving in a sharp division. And there are people within MPP who say, Bawumia said, no Ken, no vote. Those guys are pursuing an agenda. And what they are doing now is to vote for anybody else other than Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia. And that is a problem as well.
Now, as we want to talk about the issues and so on. Free SHS, how do you see it in all of these polls?
I think it has lost its potency in terms of being used to win election. I don't think I have the figures here, but those who said free education has brought a relief, financial relief for them, and if you ask them who they intend to vote for, 58% certainly are voting for Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and about 40-something% are voting for John Mahama. So the gap between those who have enjoyed, who have admitted enjoying the benefit, is not that much. And for those who said he hasn't brought financial relief, John Mahama is leading by a wider margin. And then again, when you zoom down to those who said education is a high priority for them, Mahama is leading among those who said education is a high priority compared to Bawumia. So the free education has probably lost a bit of current as an election winning issue.
Now, how do the so-called small parties feature in this poll? And I'm asking this question because one of their leaders, if you like, presidential candidate, has said that these polls are intended to do them in.
Not really. You see, regardless of the polls in this country or the elections, the smaller parties will still remain smaller parties unless we reform our electoral system, where we have some kind of proportional representation. When it is winner take all, and looking at how they've been performing, look at Gum. Gum came in the last election, and he outperformed even the CPP, PNC, and all together. It was quite new. So you could see that the old or small parties are clinging onto ideologies which is very difficult for these young voters to relate to. So I think they should rather do a market study of the voters and see what really attracts them to political parties. It should no longer be on some ideology, because over 50% or so, or close to 50% of voters between 18 and 35 years old, younger. Ideology for them doesn't sell.
But Nana Bediako,
yes,
Bediako just recently announced his interest and appears to be doing well.
Yes. Cheda, if you look at the demography that supports him, younger voters, 18 to 35, are the ones propelling his meteoric rise in the polls. And these are the people we said they are almost 50% of the voting bloc. They are very liberal in their thinking. They are progressive. And they look at him and see what he has achieved in life as a young boy. He makes them feel that they can do the same.
And probably some of them also want to take the seat to Kumasi.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much for coming, Mr. Musa Dankwa, Executive Director of Global Info Analytics. Now, viewers, we hope that this has brought some enlightenment. We now understand the polls better. We can read them better and so on. So we'd like to thank you very much for helping us.
Thank you.
And this thanks goes to you on behalf of the director of the show, Gerald, the producer. All of us at Pan-African Television say thank you very, very much. And for you viewers out there, we thank you so much for staying with us, for watching the program. We are here because you are there. Thank you very much. See you again next week. Bye-bye.